From the Foundation Studio right here on Biloxi Fact Day. Welcome to Super Talk Outdoors, where, as you know, we celebrate every single Monday at lunchtime the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi. Thanks for joining us on the powerful Super Talk Mississippi Radio Network or on Super Talk TV at C Spire TV. But if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube or your favorite podcast, it's January the 10th, 2022. Boy, 2022 is already rolling along. Deer and duck hunting in this state are in full swing. It's really a great time of the year. And wow, the crazy weather, man, it's been really incredible. Looks like some cold weather, though, is going to be hanging around for the next week or so. It's going to actually feel a little bit like winter, or like I like to say, like hunting season, at least somewhat. But finally, this past Friday, got to do some good hunting. Bundled up in the stand on Friday afternoon, and then on Saturday was burning up in the stand. So I think a lot of people who've been regular hunters probably know the feeling. Well, it's been sort of the story of this season. As I mentioned last week, the 2022 legislative session started last Tuesday at noon. Then I mentioned also it's going to be one of the more challenging legislative sessions that we've had in a long, long time for a host of reasons, not the least of which is the pandemic and other challenges that we've had along the way. I'm going to leave that up to my partners in broadcast, Paul Gallo and Gerard, to talk about the details of the session as the session goes along. But here on Super Talk Outdoors, we're going to, from time to time, talk about why what happens in Jackson matters to you as outdoorsmen and women. One issue, as I mentioned last week, that we're going to be watching really closely is the Mississippi Outdoors Stewardship Trust Fund. This is actually a once-in-a-generation opportunity for Mississippi to invest in the outdoors. We're actually currently, Mississippi is falling significantly behind other states now because they are making big time investments in the outdoors. And since we're the capital of the outdoors in the United States, we should be leading, not falling behind. That bill actually passed the House last year, 117-2, but it stalled in the Senate. So we're going to be watching that bill get reintroduced, and we'll be watching it pretty closely. We've got a great show today. We're going to be visiting in the first segment with outdoorsman Trent Mulloy, and in the second half, we're going to be visiting with Colonel Jerry Carter, who's Chief of Law Enforcement for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. So now let's move over to my friend Trent Mulloy and say good afternoon, Trent. How are you doing, buddy?
How are we doing today? We're good on for Monday.
Yeah, we're doing great. We're doing great. Listen, people are going to understand this a little bit better here in just a second, but I mentioned to you when we were off the air that if you want someone to do something, find a busy person to do it. That kind of defines you. And here's what I would describe. I say, first of all, you're a native of Laurel, and you're the president of a fourth generation family-owned business, Laurel Machine and Foundry Company. When I look at your bio, you've been involved in your community in so many different levels. You're involved in multiple industry trade groups simultaneously. And you're a member of the board of the Foundation for Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. You're a busy person, aren't you, buddy?
Just a little bit, but it keeps us young.
So where did your love of the outdoors come from?
As always, I mean, and for a lot of us, it comes from our parents. I mean, definitely my father. That was one of the things is that he grew up on the Pascagoula River. They had a fish camp. I grew up down in Mary Walker Marina when I was a very, very small child, fishing out of there, dove hunts, all over Friends Fields in South Mississippi. So, at a young age, we really got to enjoy the outdoors, and I am very lucky to have had that planted at an early age because I have a 16-year-old who is absolutely eat up with it. He'd rather be outside and either fishing or hunting than inside on an Xbox or a PlayStation right now. So and he wants to hang out with me, which is always a plus right now. I am not that uncool yet. I'm sure it's coming.
Well, first of all, as it related to my outdoor enjoyment, I always said about my love of the outdoors, it kept me out of trouble. It probably saved me, as I was growing up. And then I think about it with my sons and my daughter, the time we spend in the boat together, or the time that we spend outdoors together. It's just incredible. One of my sons has gone off to New York. He lives in New York City now, but it's still his love of his mother, of course, and his love of the outdoors that brings him home. And I mean, it's kind of the glue that keeps us together, and it's the magnet that draws us back to the coast and up to the Delta where we have a place. You see that, don't you?
Definitely. I'm kind of laughing because I've got a daughter that's in school at Fordham in Manhattan, and literally she's flying back out tomorrow after being home for Christmas. But yesterday, we're on the Polaris Ranger in the rain, riding around, and she was with me, putting out, reloading the feeders and everything for one last run for January. And I was laughing at her. I was like, baby girl, I said, you got some good stories to tell, that you're going to go from being in the mud in Pachuta, Mississippi, to being in the concrete in Manhattan in in less than 36 hours. And she says, I don't think a lot of my other friends back home are doing this right now. So it's great to be able to go to both worlds.
Well, it's neat. I didn't know that your daughter was there, but I said to my son when he was home for Christmas, we spent a week together up at our place in the Delta, and I said, man, it's a long way from Mississippi Delta to New York City, isn't it, buddy? He said, it's closer than you think, he always reminds me. But, I had the opportunity to work for the Newhouse family for Advanced Condé Nast. That's where I spent the majority of my, the last part of my career. So at least once a month, I was up in New York meeting with them for board meetings or different meetings. It's a good place to visit, but it's not a place I'd want to live. But my son loves it there. I'm assuming your daughter does as well.
My daughter does. And then when I take my son off, I said, if we're out walking at Norton Central Park, he's like, there's not a lot of trees. Don't see any squirrels. It's about time to go home. And so he's kind of like me. He likes to visit, but he's ready to be back out. And but there seems to be a lot more oxygen.
Hey, look, the last couple of weeks for me, Trent, has been it's been a great reminder of this sort of generational importance of the outdoors. I had a hunt a couple of weeks ago with a young man by the name of Jackson Dunn. His father's Clint Dunn, and Clint and his brother Travis are really good friends of ours. They're farmers up there. We lease some farms from them, and they're just really, really good friends. And Jackson's such a bright young man. Love being with him, but when I'm sitting with him and hunting with him, just to see him talk about what the outdoors means to him, and pulling out his phone and showing different pictures and trail cam pictures and all that. And then my son last Monday had this goal to shoot a shooter buck with a 16 gauge single shot Winchester, which was my grandfather's. And that means he had to hunt from the ground. And he called me at about 4:30. My phone lit up, and I told Ann, I said, that's Jordan calling, because he'd been texting me obviously during the hunt. And he couldn't hardly catch his breath, man. He'd killed a beautiful 8-point, and he had reached his goal of shooting this buck with his grandfather's gun. And then last weekend, I had the opportunity to hunt with my friend Mark Creech and his father, Ed, Ed's in his 80s and can run circles around most of us. But, all these, just in the past 2 weeks, this opportunity to be reminded about the generational importance of the outdoors. Man, I can't say how important that is, can I?
It's absolutely amazing. And I will say that we're very, very lucky and blessed to have some friends with some really nice hunting places up in the Delta. And we've been up there, and I've taken my son up there, and I'm like, man, we're going to go hit, go to wherever we're going to go out duck hunting the next morning. And there's a lot of older gentlemen, like I say, as they're getting in their 80s and stuff like that. And they're like, oh no, you're not going with us, but your son, who was 15 at the time, is going with us. And so my son got to sit around the blind with these people, these gentlemen he didn't even know. And he had one of the best times of his life. They were telling him stories, and I mean, the guns that they had, the stories behind them. And these are very successful gentlemen down in South Alabama, around Mobile, places like that. And my son Henry didn't know them from Adam's house cat, but he gets to be around people that he does not normally get to be around, and gets to learn. I mean, all kinds of things. I mean, hunting's at that point is almost secondary. So I'm very excited that, when things like that happen. And it's usually it's spontaneous. There was no plan that this was going to happen. I thought I was going to get to hunt with him. Well, guess what? He probably had a better time hunting with a bunch of old men. He thinks I'm old. I don't know how old he thinks somebody 85 years old is, but he had a great time, learned some life lessons, and it's stuff like that is just fantastic.
Well, look, we're coming to the end of this segment together, but we're talking with Trent Mulloy. He's just a terrific outdoorsman. He's a member of the board for the Foundation for Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. When we come back, we'll talk about, I sense, too, that he's got a little bit of salt water in his blood. And now that I've heard about Mary Walker Marina, I see where that probably came from. But we'll continue the conversation with Trent, talk about our love of the outdoors, talk a little bit more about the foundation and why he's involved in the foundation. But we'll see you after this break.
Conversation on Mississippi's outdoors. It's Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I have my friend Trent Mulloy, who is an outdoorsman in Mississippi. He's from Laurel. Got a lot of things going on in his life, but like a lot of busy people, man, not only do you find time to enjoy the outdoors, but you also find the time to give back. We'll talk a little bit more about the foundation in a second. But Trent, picking up from that theme just a second ago, you were talking about sort of the serendipity of the moment when your son was asked to go duck hunting with those older men and the opportunity for them to share with him and him to learn from them. Some people who think about hunting, they only think about, the taking of the animal, and they don't understand or don't appreciate all these like surrounding life lessons. If I never pull a trigger, I'm completely fulfilled every opportunity I get to spend time with family and friends. But that's what it's really all about, isn't it?
By far, and like I say, as I was saying earlier, I was laughing at a friend. I was talking about we'd gone deer hunting with some at a buddy's place over near Port Gibson, and after about the third day, I had to leave, and he's like, "Well, at least you didn't screw up a good deer hunt by killing the deer." And I laughed. I'm like, that kind of puzzled me for a second, and then after dwelling on it about 30 seconds, I said, it's kind of absolutely right. I said that's a lot of work when you actually kill the deer, but all the camaraderie and everything else you do up to that point is really what it's about. And once again, I get to be with friends that I don't get to see every day, and I get to spend long weekends with them. And it's a wide spectrum of folks from I say that some of them are all over Mississippi, some of them are all over the United States that come and ebb and flow and out of some of our clubs and some of the places that we hunt. And it's just a fantastic thing.
Yeah.
And my kid is getting to learn some life skills, and he's drugged my godson who lives down in Sarasota, Florida. Down in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. He started dragging him up to the Delta. And they're teaching these Florida boys exactly what the Delta is about, and they've had their eyes open. They've learned what duck hunting really is, as opposed to shooting a few woodies down in the marsh outside of Delta.
Well, that is for sure. And as I mentioned, you do have salt water in your blood, but when you take the total Mississippi experience, whether it's the saltwater fishing off the coast, which we have some of the best in the world because of what we have access to, and then the Delta and Northeast Mississippi and the turkey hunting, all in between. You understand why I say Mississippi is the capital of the outdoors in the United States. I mean, that's a fair statement to make, isn't it?
Very much so. And sometimes I roll my eyes, sport, and I'm not picking on my Louisiana friends, but sometimes I feel like we're the redheaded stepchild because they're like, oh, sportsman's paradise and all that, but I feel like the duck hunting and the fishing and the deer hunting. I mean, I don't know if I'm just paying attention more, but the deer I have seen on social media killed in Mississippi this year, and even down in Jones County, I am like, holy smokes. I said, I don't know if everybody has just kicked up their conservation game or what, but I am utterly convinced we're in a great spot for it doesn't matter if it's saltwater fishing or freshwater duck hunting, deer hunting, what have you. We're just in a great spot, and we're very lucky to have what all we've got.
I think we coming back to your point about the pictures that have been posted, one is I think we're in an amazing spot. The genetics are incredible. But on top of that, I think that the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks over the last few years have done a great job of helping people understand if you pass on deer, for a long time ago, you were lucky to see an antler deer, much less shoot one. But you look, fast forward through today, the amount of education, the amount of awareness around what really constitutes a deer in its prime, a deer when it's reaching its potential. The department's done a great job of helping educate people, and we're all benefiting now from that education, aren't we?
I think so. I mean, is that, I say this, but my son used to, is that, if he saw an 8-point, it was going to get smoked. And now it's like, once again, we've been doing, we've gone to the department and asked them for some ideas on what we should plant and when we should plant. Because once again, I don't have an agricultural background. I'm in the metal world. And so they've helped us. And I think they've helped us at our property definitely get our antlers going in the right direction. And for the folks that and us do this part-time, I mean, we do it ourselves. We don't have anybody that does it for us. So there's some great folks. I will say this, they've got some great programs. Is that I dropped my son Henry off when he was 13 at a waterfowl weekend that the department was putting on up in the Delta, and there were 12 or 13 kids that didn't know each other's from Adam's house cat. Some of these kids, some of these had never even picked up a gun before, and they got to spend 2 nights, and the officers trained them. It didn't matter from how to shoot a gun, how to identify ducks. They took them out, and did the biology side of it. And I mean, I'm gonna say that's probably one of the things that fired my child up so much. And he got to meet Howard. He's got these wildlife officers, and hey, they're not. I mean, it used to be you're like, oh, make sure your plug's in the gun, make sure we got our license. And now he knows a lot of these guys by names, and if he sees them, and gets to talk to them. So it's been great, because once again, you learn that these are good people, that they are great people, and they're wanting to help, conserve our wild Mississippi, and that actually help you have a better time out there too.
Yeah, it really is. I actually had John Grucci on last week, who's head of the private lands program for the department. And I've had a string of others from the department. I have Jerry Carter coming up here shortly, who's head of law enforcement. But we're lucky to have such an able group. And, again, coming back to you, and, you've given to the community, you've given to your trade organizations, but you've also given to the outdoors community. What is it that drives you to want to be involved in the Foundation for Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks?
I guess you get to a certain age in your life is that you do want to give back to your community, and various people do it in various ways. Is depending on if they're in a Rotary Club or Kiwanis or things like that, or maybe they're serving on the board at BIPEC in Jackson or something like that. But I really enjoy the outdoors, and it's a good group of folks. And I had one of my good friends was on the board, and he kind of drove me into it, kicking and screaming. And I'm like, this is the last thing I need to do is be on another board. And I said, all they want to do is want more money. And I'm like, I'm still on a lot of boards. I'm still on too many boards, but this is my favorite board, because it is, you get to see, the work that you do is actually doing something good. Be it archery in schools, the shooting programs, things of that nature. There's a very tangible, asset that you get to see. Be it, once again, the playground up in Jackson that Blue Cross Blue Shield helped us out with. The new Wildlife and Agricultural Expo that we partnered up with Commissioner Gibson with. These things we see happening, and we see that they're doing good for the conservation of wildlife and lands in Mississippi. And that, as I say, it's a lot of these other ones, you sit on a boardroom and you look at a whiteboard and you really don't see, and whether you're doing good, it's kind of hard to see the fruits of your labor. Working on the foundation and being there, you get to see, sometimes it's like drinking from a fire hose, but you get to see and meet some really good folks with these programs.
But what you've been able to do, I've noticed, and doing my research and obviously being in touch with members of the foundation, the opportunity to help, of course, is separate from the department. It's a separate organization raising money, not only to fill the gaps for the department, but also to do other things as well, having to do with education, outdoors education, or maybe it's issues orientation. From time to time, you guys will get locked in on an issue, and that's important as well. But, it's great when you see this group of people come together, all busy, all successful people who are just giving back in a way that says we're gonna make sure that we're able to maintain our status as one of the top outdoor places in the United States. And when you get a sense of that, and you sort of catch that enthusiasm from the people on the board, it's hard not to be involved.
Very much so. It is. Everybody feeds off of each other, and we have some really exciting people on the board, and they are usually very, very fired up. And everybody kind of has. I mean, they're different pockets. I mean, some of it is archery, some of it is being on some of the landowner issues, and it's just a wide spectrum of folks. But everybody is, and I say that our board is a working board, and that's one thing we tell new board members. This is not. So, and I don't know why you would need this on your resume, but this isn't some fancy thing like, look, I get to be able to, we probably put more hours in than I think than a lot of other boards combined. But it's fun. I got to meet you. I mean, you and I was standing on the wall at the Heritage 100, and we started talking. I'm like, holy smokes, this guy, he's been a lot of places I've been, and maybe a few more. And so, especially when we started talking about the coast. So it was, we get to meet some great folks that you usually don't see. I mean, we don't get to run into Jackson folks a lot, being down here in the free state of Jones. We're kind of caught in the Neverland between the coast and the capital, but when we do, it works out really well.
Well, Trent Mulloy, it's been a pleasure to visit with you and get to know you better, share just some outdoor conversation with you. And good luck to you as you continue on in your fourth generation family-owned business and continue your good work with the foundation. We appreciate you.
All right, Ricky, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And we will talk to you soon, I guess.
You bet. You bet. Hey, when we come back, we're going to continue the conversation with Colonel Jerry Carter, head of law enforcement for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I really enjoyed that conversation with Trent Mulloy. We have so many dedicated outdoorsmen in this state that are going beyond the call of duty to help sort of strengthen is probably a good way to say it, our ability to enjoy the outdoors. And the foundation that sponsors this show, incidentally, the Foundation for Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, is just one of those organizations. We'll be talking to volunteers from other organizations as we go forward, because we're lucky when you take the conglomerate of nonprofit organizations that are focused on the outdoors, you bring them together in coalitions along the way. Man, you touch a lot of people and you get a lot of good stuff done. That's really, really important. So now let's move on to my new friend, Colonel Jerry Carter, who's Chief of Law Enforcement for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. How you doing, Jerry?
Doing good, Ricky. How about yourself? Good morning.
It's good to see you. Man, I was so interested in reading about you. You know the Morgan City area of LaFleur County really well. There were 5 boys in your family.
That's correct.
Yeah, so you had 4 brothers. That had to have been wild.
It was an experience.
So you went to LaFleur County High in Itta Bena. You went to Mississippi Valley State University. But you grew up loving the outdoors, didn't you?
That is correct. Born and raised in the Mississippi Delta. Of course, all your life you're exposed to the outdoors, where I grew up at in the rural part of the county. We did a lot of hunting and fishing and rabbit hunting, all the above. So I had a love for the outdoors and fascinated with nature, and just grew up around it. So it's been with me for all my life.
Well, I have farmers who live in Itta Bena, the Dunn family, and Travis Dunn and Clint Dunn and that family, who we lease some farms with, Lee Abraham and Sam Abraham. I'm sure you know them well.
Know them very well.
But we love spending time out there, man. We have a place up in Chula, and then we have another one in Minter City, and then that area between Greenwood and kind of skirts on Sidon, and then up into the hills a little bit. But
yes,
you know, I tell you, in the summertime, I love being offshore and fishing the backwaters of coastal Mississippi, and in the wintertime, I can't wait to get back to the Delta. It somehow gets in your blood, doesn't it?
It does. The Mississippi Delta, it's a unique area. I tell a lot of folks we're real good down to earth people there in the Mississippi Delta. Of course, if you can get by the mosquitoes mosquitoes in the summertime.
Well, that same thing true for the coast for sure. But if I look back in your career, man, you've been director of communications. You've been involved in education on so many different fronts. You've been an emergency management coordinator. I mean, you really worked hard over those years to really learn the agency, learn how to not only protect and conserve the outdoors, but to make it safe for people who enjoy the outdoors.
That is
your whole life has been sort of at least your adult life's been dedicated to that, hasn't it?
Yes, sir, it has. I started in the agency back in 1988. Started out as an officer there in LaFleur County. Trained by, I would have to say, some of the best officers. I call them legends in my area that trained me and worked with. They had the privilege to work with a lot of good officers in that area. Learned a lot from them. I got an experience on the Mississippi River, all the above. So was trained by some good officers during my time there as a county officer. And as gradually I went up through the ranks and got involved in other projects, served on our covert team as well. And when we started it out, also with the Honor Guard, started that program back up where of course, we do funerals for fallen officers, and we do an annual Fallen Officers Memorial here where we honor our officers that paid the ultimate sacrifice.
Well, to sort of work your way up and become the chief of enforcement, and it's got to be very inspiring to you now to be in that position and look at all these well over 100 officers that work with you on a day-to-day basis, not counting the administrative staff.
Yes, sir.
But you're really surrounded with some super dedicated people. That's got to be inspiring to you.
That means a lot when you're in the position and where I'm at. It's a lot of responsibilities, and with that you need support and you need to help. And I am grateful for the staff that I have here. I got a assistant chief now, Lieutenant Colonel Scotty Jones. He's my go-to guy. And he has other officers in the law enforcement here at headquarters that works under not only him but myself as well. And I got a great team here. We just finished up training. I've got a good TAC officer that's over the training. I've got a officer that deals with investigations. I've got my man, I guess one of the main important people, which is the guy that sees the budget. He takes care of us, and also have my captain here with the SRT. So we got a good staff, and then it spreads on out into the field and in all the regions. I've got a good group of majors that oversees the central, north, and south region, along with their captains and lieutenants all the way down to the field officers. So it is a great structure that we have here. A good group of men and women in this agency that wear the green and gray and make this agency what it is, and we're moving it forward.
Well, I've had a number of representatives from the department on recently. Had one show that we just dedicated to safety. I mean, people have a tendency just to forget the basics, man. What happens is I don't care how experienced you are, you get lax. People forget to unload a gun, for example, or check a strap on a lock-on or leaning ladder stand or any number of other things like that. But I had Megan Fedrick on and also had Dean Hudson on and Chris Reed. They all represented you in the department extraordinarily well. But it is amazing, though, how if we don't stay focused on it, how lax we can get and how dangerous. I mean, we can be just around the corner from a disaster. Yeah. When we are typically some of the most safety conscious people in the world. You got to keep that stuff front and center, don't you?
That is correct. Yes, sir. During my course of my career in conducting and teaching hunter safety class, I say this, when we would have some of the older, the parents would bring their kids to the hunter safety class, and they sit in with us as well and get that experience, because there are some areas when they go out of state, automatically the adults have to have the hunter education to hunt in other states. But with that being said, when the classes are over with or when the classes take a break, a lot of the seniors or older family members would come to me and say, you know what, I've been doing this wrong all the time, and this education program has really opened up a lot of knowledge for me to go a different route. So yes, hunter education is very important. it is definitely needed here in our state. It helps us to try to get our sportsmen to be responsible, to be sure of their safety of it, from equipment all the way down to the weapon itself, to get them to get knowledgeable about that. It is very important. Right now, we just recently recorded now a hunting accident this past weekend, which gives us 8 hunting accidents, and sad to say, one of them resulted in a fatality. And there were some hunter errors and break of harnesses and all that. So we tell our students in the classes, get to know your weapon, get to know your equipment, treat every gun, every weapon as if it was loaded. Separate your ammunition from your weapon. Be sure your target and beyond. We teach that a lot in our hunter safety classes, and we know I call it. I know some of the sportsmen, they get what we call buck fever, and they just have tunnel vision, and all safety and all what you've been taught kind of goes out of the door. But we stress it a lot to our sportsmen. That's the thing about being safety when you're out there in the field.
There are 2 cases, Jerry, that I'm aware of. One last year and one this year, where in one case, a gun was loaded and it shifted in the back of a truck and it went off, and no one was shot, thank God.
Yes.
And the second incident, someone was unloading a gun and it went off, and it went through several walls and ricocheted, and a fragment hit someone in the thigh.
Mm-hmm.
But and in both cases, the people involved were some of the most safety conscious people I know. That's the point I want to make. And mine is kind of a family and friends kind of group that I put together to be able to lease this land and enjoy hunting with them. But I have a rule, guns got to be unloaded. As soon as you get done hunting, unload your gun. That doesn't mean one out of the chamber and keep them in the clip. That means completely unloaded. And when you come into the camp, that breech has to be opened. And if you see a gun without the breech open, you got to check it. We kind of running around checking each other. People say, well, I'll just go keep my gun in the truck. No, actually, I want you to go through the paces of making sure that gun's loaded. Bring it into the camp so we can make sure you're not making a mistake. It could shift in your truck if it's loaded and come through the wall of the camp, and then we can have these are all incredibly viable things that have happened before, as we all know. So you can't be too safety conscious. Hey, when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the things that are going on this season. We talked about some of the injuries that have resulted, but we're going to get just kind of an overall assessment of how this hunting season is going so far from Colonel Jerry Carter, who's Chief of Law Enforcement. Colonel Jerry Carter. He's Chief of Law Enforcement for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And we'll circle back for 1 second. One of the things we were saying during the break as it related to safety is that, really the way I would say it, Jerry, is that there's literally no margin for error. There's no margin. You can't make a mistake. A lot of times, if you just make a mistake in life, you say, okay, I'm going to learn from that mistake, I'll move on. Kind of mistakes you see that people make can oftentimes lead to a serious injury or even death. So I can't emphasize this whole notion of there's not a margin for error enough, can I?
Cannot, sir. Yeah, our sportsmen have to realize once that shot is fired, you can't call it back. And we pray that through that unfortunate accident, it doesn't result in injury or death. So we stress again to our sportsmen out there, make sure your weapon is always unloaded, separated from the weapon, the ammunition in your gun. Make sure they're separated. And what you stated earlier, what you all are doing in your deer camp, I think that is a great idea what you're doing, and I wish other deer camps hopefully will follow lead on that as well, and follow suit.
So important. So you're over field operations for the entire state of Mississippi. You've got conservation officers literally in every nook and cranny around this state. When you guys talk to them, how do you assess the way the season's going so far?
Well, we talk with we get a weekly report from the field, from our majors on to here in the headquarters, and we assess it from there. What's actually going on? I myself, along with the lieutenant colonel, we take the opportunity. We go out in the field and we see hands-on up front. I want to get out and still see if I still got it in my blood. The enforcement side of it. But just to get a feel from them, what's going on out there, what's the need, what our officers need to make sure that they're doing their jobs effectively and professionally, how we're serving the general public, how we're answering calls and complaints. We assess all of those things because we want to make sure that not only the safety side of it, we want to make sure that our sportsmen are abiding by the laws of the state to help us in preserving the resources.
Hey, one of the things I learned in my conversations with your team is that one of the biggest violations is that people don't have a hunting license. I mean, kind of sort of the basic requirement. It helps support efforts in the state to conserve the outdoors, but it's important to own a hunting license, isn't it?
That is correct. Of course, our license is a year after during the date of purchase. Sometimes they just forget. I've came across that situation. I thought I bought my license, and no, sir, you didn't buy them. And so we have that biggest problem, and we always encourage them. During the season. Before and during the season is call that 1-800-5GO-HUNT. Purchase a license online over the phone, and you can go that route. So definitely that is one of the biggest problems we run into on the enforcement side. They don't buy the license.
The other thing I learned is that people still this whole notion of hunting over a pile of corn. People still wanting to do that. It's in some cases a hard habit to break, but it's against the law, isn't it?
It is definitely. We do allow supplemental feeding in our state, but we do have people that kind of get a little bit carried away with it, and of course we are really seeing numbers increasing on that. And thanks to our guys on the enforcement efforts that they're doing, and I'll say this also: the information we get from the general public, they have been fantastic in reporting those violations to us, where we can't be everywhere. So we're grateful for our sportsmen that call us and tell us where there may be some illegal activity as it relates to supplemental feeding by them not abiding by the guidelines that's set forward.
Are you guys able to do aerial surveys on that?
It depends. We do have a GIS team here with our agency, or officers may go other means to try to locate any type of baited area through aerial search. But mainly we do a lot of it just by on the ground level and by the reports we get in the field.
It's amazing what you mentioned drone at some point, but it's amazing technology has really changed your ability to do your work, hasn't it?
It has. Over the years, my 30-some years with this agency, I have seen a tremendous the technology has been one of our main good tools that we have used and has been very successful in us in prosecution and getting convictions on some of our violations that occur in our state.
Well, look, we're running out of time. We've talked about a lot of the important stuff, but we got more to talk about. So I'm gonna have you back in a few weeks. You're a terrific spokesman. It's no wonder to me that you were head of communications at some point, because you're a terrific communicator. You're passionate about what you do. But it's been a pleasure to get to know you better, and I look forward to you being a regular on Super Talk Outdoors.
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.
That's great.
Just want to say one more thing. Just want to encourage our sportsmen as well as the general public. make sure any report of all hunting violations, 1-800-BE-SMART. We definitely would like for you all to get those calls in to us.
Thank you very much, Colonel Jerry Carter. Have a great day, and we'll see you next Monday.
Thank you, sir.